As we continue with former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon is with us. You know, I go over this whole thing. Now we know that Hillary basically rigged and stole a primary. There's no, the evidence is overwhelming, incontrovertible. Then she tried to, by spending money, we know she spent the money, she controlled the DNC, they spent the money, and they paid for this phony Russian dossier, Russian lies, propaganda, to influence the American people, bought and paid for by Clinton. Then we've got this whole issue of Uranium One. Mueller knew in 2009 about, and so did Eric Holder, about bribery, extortion, kickbacks, money laundering, and racketeering. A year later, the Uranium One deal goes through. Steve, we have to import uranium because we don't have enough uranium in this country. No one has ever given any simple, why would we ever, knowing especially the crimes committed by Putin's thugs in this country, ever allow Putin control of 20% of our uranium? And I'm not even talking about the Clintons getting more money in speaking fees and 145 million kicked back to the foundation. When you look at these things in light of what is going on for a year, when there's no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, as Dianne Feinstein said on Sunday, what are your thoughts?
I think what you're seeing is that the opposition party media, the progressive left, Democrats, and the corporatists they're trying to nullify the 2016 election. I mean, it's very obvious what's going on. I'm here in Macomb County, Michigan, which is the home of the Reagan Democrats that gave President Trump an overwhelming victory on election night and actually had the Detroit Free Press reverse their call of the state of Michigan for Hillary Clinton and give it later to Donald Trump. And the working men and women of this county are the ones that did it. And what you're seeing is that the elites in this country don't want the people in Macomb County to have a voice. They are trying to nullify the 2016 election. And they're doing it with every underhanded thing they hit. That's why the entire Russian collusion thing is a joke. The Clintons have been so corrupt
Steve,
for
wait a
so
minute.
long.
There was collusion. Hillary Clinton bought and paid for Russian lies.
Right.
There was
right.
use whatever term you
want. It's incumbent. I tell you, that's incumbent to me upon Grassley in the committee and also Senator Sessions. If Mueller won't pick this up in his investigation, when he's now looking at guys' tax returns like Paul Manafort's and charges of wire fraud and things that happened 10 years ago, then it seems to me that Senator Sessions has to look into the Clinton situation, particularly Uranium One. I think a special counsel ought to be designated for Uranium One. The American people got to get to the bottom of that.
There's crimes on, listen, there's crimes on the email server, known crimes, cover-up, obstruction, espionage, all of these things we've gone through. I won't repeat them, but you're right, 20% of uranium, really? And Mueller knew. How could he investigate anything Russia? Let me ask you a political question.
Yes, sir.
And I know this is important because you have said you were going after those people. Look, we see people like Ben Sasse and Jeff Flake and John McCain and other people. They hate the president. They haven't gotten a single thing accomplished. To the credit of the House did pass almost 300 bills, including, sanctuary cities and Kate's Law. They got some work done. And they passed a health care bill, imperfect, but they got it done. And my question is this. Isn't it at the end of the day, you and Reince Priebus, Reince is more establishment than you. You're a conservative outsider, kind of like, I think we agree on a lot of politics, so you're wrong on not cutting taxes for everybody. That's another night. But you guys made it work. Why can't the Republicans that maybe don't like Trump personally look at his agenda and say, I asked them, what part of his agenda beyond say, trade that isn't conservative? Is Gorsuch not a conservative? Is his tax plan, except for the not across the board, not conservative? Immigration, not conservative?
Listen, this is what I gave the speech about tonight, about victory and about winning more victories in the future. Reince and I came together as soon as I was designated CEO of the campaign. The only way we won in the 85 days we had to go was to put together a coalition. We had the religious right, we had the Tea Party groups, we had the populists, we had the economic nationalists, and we had the Republican establishment. And Reince and I had a great working relationship. We had a great working relationship in the White House. I think what you're seeing is really the donor class, and particularly in the United States Senate with Mitch McConnell. The House has actually voted on 180 bills that the Senate has not taken up, including many bills that would be a very difficult vote for Joe Manchin and Claire McCaskill and John Tester and Heidi Heitkamp and other of these red state Democrats that we need to take down in 2018. And Mitch McConnell's refused to do it. I tell you, Sean, I'm to the point that I think Mitch McConnell, to really bring unity to the Republican Party and get things done. I think Mitch McConnell ought to tender his resignation. What he ought to do is offer to resign as soon as taxes are done. We can't do it in the middle of taxes, but I think Mitch McConnell tomorrow should tender his resignation and said, hey, after we get taxes done, I will step aside and we'll have a revote on majority leader. Because I got to tell you, there needs to be a sense of urgency in the Senate. You know, over the last about week, you know, they're now going to work 6 days a week. They're talking about canceling Thanksgiving. They passed the budget. They're starting to move on federal judges. But that's all because, quite frankly, we put the spotlight on Mitch McConnell and said that this guy is just not supporting the president, and he's not supporting the president. The president needs support. If you want to drain the swamp.
He's not helping the forgotten men and women. The people in this country, their inactivity, their lack of urgency, their many vacations. It's not help. The president, just by getting rid of burdensome Obama-era regulations, look what's happened to the economy. Imagine if they would explode the economy with this bill. But they have given up on Reagan's supply-side conservative tax cuts across the board. Reagan went from 70 to 28% top margin rates. This is actually a private issue you and I disagree with on that part. They're great on the corporate tax cuts. They're great on the repatriation. The president's been great on energy independence. That all stimulates the economy, manufacturing. Factories are going to be built as a result.
Well, I think that this tax package is not perfect. I really don't think it's fundamental tax reform.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to wait on that. I think what we're looking now is a tax cut. Let's get this tax cut through. Look, President Trump's policies on economic nationalism have the economy growing at over 3% right now. All the geniuses, right, on MSNBC and CNN, the Wall Street Journal, they never thought that President Trump would get to 3% on his economic nationalism. He has the lowest Hispanic, unemployment rate in 11 years, the lowest black unemployment in 17 years. Wages are starting to rise among the working class and construction and agriculture. President Trump, there's more business investment. Yeah, because his program is working. His program of saying, hey, I'm going to have tariffs, I'm going to have quotas, unless you start putting your factories in the United States is working.
I agree with you on McConnell. Step up, get the job done, or get out. I'm tired of it. Steve, good to see you.
He should tender his resignation tonight for after the tax cuts.
I know you hate doing interviews. We appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you. Secretary Kelly, included in the President's budget is a provision that says, quote, the Secretary of Homeland Security may condition a grant or cooperative agreement awarded by the Department of Homeland Security to a state or political subdivision of a state for a purpose related to immigration, national security, law enforcement, or preventing, preparing for, or protecting against or responding to acts of terrorism. Specifically, the budget authorizes the Secretary to condition grants on compliance with any lawful request by DHS to detain an alien for a period not to exceed 48 hours. Are you familiar with that?
I'm fairly familiar with it, yes.
I'm sorry?
Fairly familiar with it, yes.
Grants that are subject to new conditions would include the Urban Area Security Initiative, a DHS grant that provided California last year with $124 million to help urban areas prevent, mitigate, and respond to acts of terrorism. This grant supports more than 100 incorporated jurisdictions in 12 counties in the Bay Area of California alone. It supports them to buy equipment, enhance systems, and conduct trainings so that localities can prevent, mitigate, and respond to acts of terrorism. Are you aware of that?
That's a good thing.
Another DHS grant is the State Homeland Security Grant Program that provided California $60.2 million last year to support state, local, and tribal efforts to prevent terrorism and to prepare the nation for threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk to security in the United States. Is that correct?
I wish I had the same document I could read from as you do.
Are you familiar with this grant program in your department?
I'm familiar with the grant program.
And are you aware that there are a number of federal courts that have imposed civil liability on local governments for complying with ICE detainer orders that were not supported by probable cause? Can you answer the question?
Am I aware of that?
Yes.
I am.
And in order then to comply with a 48-hour ICE detainer made with no probable cause, wouldn't that force the jurisdiction to choose whether to comply with a federal court ruling or forfeit vital public safety funds that are administered by your department?
I'm not a lawyer, but I think that federal law is federal law, is state law, and if you know, we have a different view of the impact of some of the state rulings, but I'm not.
Well, imagine, sir, if you will, that you were a local law enforcement leader presented with a choice of either complying with federal law that means that you may expose your department and your jurisdiction to civil liability, or forfeiting DHS funds that are designed and intended to help you fight terrorism at a local level. Wouldn't you agree that puts those law enforcement leaders in it's almost a Hobbesian choice?
Well, Senator,
how are they supposed to choose?
had you not cut me off, I would have said the same thing you just said. Probably not as eloquently, but I'd have said the same thing you said. I appreciate the fix they're in. I appreciate that they get their legal advice from the state and locals. Below the radar, we work with every police and sheriff department in this country to the degree that they can and are comfortable with.
Secretary Kelly, what do you mean below the radar? They have two choices, and they are accountable.
Excuse
me, sir. They are accountable to their jurisdiction, to the bodies that may have appointed or elected them. Right. And they have to make choices. What do you mean below the radar?
We talk to them on the telephone. And
what are you instructing them to do when presented with those two choices? And we
tell them to, whatever they can do within the law, the interpretation, we're willing to work with them.
So are you aware that there are local law enforcement...
At least finish once before you interrupt me?
Sir, with all due respect.
With all due respect, Senator.
Are you instructing local law enforcement leaders that they can overlook a DHS detainer request so they're not exposed to criminal liability?
We talk to them about whatever they're comfortable with, whatever they think they can do within the interpretation of their local attorneys general, as an example, or local lawyers.
So when they're instructed,
once,
excuse
Senator,
me, I'm asking the questions.
But I'm trying to answer the question.
When they tell you, as I know local police chiefs are being told, that it would expose their municipality to civil liability if they comply with the detainer request, are you telling them that you will not withhold the DHS federal funding that they rely on?
Okay, before I start to answer, will you let me finish?
If it's responsive to the question, of course.
We talk to them on the phone and tell them whatever they're comfortable with, whatever they can do within the interpretation of their local lawyers or legal advisors, we'll work with them.
So are you willing to then not withhold federal funding when police chiefs tell you that they cannot comply with the detainer request because they've been told by their lawyer that they will expose their jurisdiction or their department to civil liability?
I'm willing to work with them in any way I can within the law, federal and local law, whatever they're comfortable with. I don't make threats to people, Senator.
Thank you.